Well, everybody, it has been a long time, but I am excited to welcome Gabriela back to the Flower Podcast. Welcome.
Oh, hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be back here. It's been 2 years and something. So
Yeah,
we talked. So
it
it's
has.
exciting to be back here. Thank you
It,
for having me.
my pleasure. And so your episode, I still remember, was one that just really inspired me in a lot of ways. And I hope that if you haven't heard the first episode with Gabriela, we'll put the links in our show notes and different things so you can go back and hear it. But so we won't get into her story and all that this time. But there's all kind of exciting new things that are going on all the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, before when we met last time, it was October. We were at Flower Stock at Holly Chapels, October of 2019, just before the craziness started. What, 4 or 5 months later?
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, you live a couple hours outside Mexico City, right?
Yes, exactly. It's like 2 hours and away, 2 hours and a half away from Mexico City. Yes.
Okay. In this wonderful area that sounds like a little piece of heaven. And so what's going on? How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's been 2 very intense years. I mean, a lot of things happen obviously outside, but the garden always keeps going. That doesn't stop. And so it actually allowed me to be a lot in the garden, to start growing different things. And in that sense was really good. But also what happened during the pandemic is that I started my online classes, which was really, really exciting. And we created a very beautiful community of florists and growers. We Zoom, even after the classes are done, we Zoom every now and then to catch up and to keep talking about what we're doing. It's a class that I teach, but what is really incredible is that I learned a lot from the people that have joined the community, because we have growers from every single place, I think. So every part of America, we have people from Canada, we have people from New Zealand, we have people from Australia, we
Wow.
have people from Europe, and some people that were like joining the Zoom sessions, even if it was like 2 a.m. in the morning in somewhere else in the world. We were trying to catch up with all the time zones difference and everything. So, but there were like people that made the effort to join the community. So it's been very enriching, because obviously we share a lot of the things that we're doing, what we're growing, what has been the difficulty, the last year, in all aspects, from the business side of it, from the, technical side of growing. And I learn a lot from my students. So it's for me, one of the highlights of last year was really the response for that online class and the community that we have created out there.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, and I think, one of the things I definitely want to talk about here in a minute is just the fact that your course actually pulls together like two, both the farmer and the florist, because you do it all, and so you have the really unique experience of being able to do that too. So I think that's really cool. I wanted to ask, so I, I know I'm sidetracking myself and probably you, but the pandemic in Mexico. So how was that? I mean, did they have the shutdowns, the business stop like it did everywhere, or did it keep?
No, it's quite funny, because Mexico, I think, was one of the only countries that didn't have any regulations for people to come here. So it became a little bit of a destination for a lot of people that were really tired of their lockdown. I think it's the country that received more tourists of the world during the pandemic. But in any case, here in the countryside, especially in Valle, it was kind of mild. We didn't have a lot of cases. It was actually, it's always been a little piece of heaven. So it's, we are a little bit out of reality in that sense. But it was great, as I'm telling you, because the class, or my class, is called the Heartfelt Floristry.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of that becomes, because what I wanted to do, and that's something that I have discovered here in my garden, is that the closest you become to flowers, the closest or intimate you become with nature, the better designer you become. So that was also something I experienced during pandemic. I was like completely lost in the like all the work of events and having to do weddings and weddings and then weddings. And then suddenly that stopped, for a little while here in Mexico during COVID. So then I had spent more time in my garden, and then I started to realize the power of that connection that I have with my garden, and how it was really a luxury to have it, in a moment like that, where the world was really like having to go through something so difficult. I had this little piece of heaven, and I feel very grateful for it, because it allowed me to keep working in my design skills, to go out there and look for inspiration, fall in love with flowers all again, and have the time to do it, slowly, with no rush, with no deadlines, with no brief, just to be creative. And that was really what inspired me to do the classes, because I thought, this is amazing. People can think that growing a garden has to be something, or a small patio, or even in pots, something that you have to maybe find a return in selling the flowers. But I don't think so. It is for your own self. It's for you to become a better designer. The more you grow things, the more you become intimate with the cycle of, life flowers, it really impacts the way you design. And that's what has really changed during these last 2 years. I really believe that every single florist should have the experience of growing at least something, because it transforms you completely, and it transforms your relation with nature, your relation with yourself, and the way you design. So that's what happens during those 2 years, which I think is pretty beautiful.
I do too a lot. One of the beautiful things about what you do is, in growing so many of your flowers, is you don't probably have some of the same sourcing issues. Has Mexico, or Mexico City specifically, had a lot of sourcing issues with product like we've seen here in the States? Or has it, how has that kind of worked out for you?
Well, when we talked 2 years and a half ago, Mexico was starting to change. The flower market in Mexico was starting to incorporate more varieties of the flowers that florists are looking forward to have, more softer flowers, more less traditional roses, for example. And it has changed completely in the last 5 years. I think if you look back to the market in the city 5 years ago and now, it's a completely different market. Now it has more of the beauty, but it's a very particular market. It carries a lot of volume. It's about volume. It's you have very specific growers around the area that grows more romantic, with flowers with movement, specific colors. It's this overwhelming, beautiful market full of gladiolas and full of roses and full of lilies and like more that type of flowers. But it is a beautiful place to go, and it is beautiful because the connection that people in Mexico has with flowers is really deep. You see every single corner in the city a flower store, a flower place where you can buy something. And I wasn't so aware about that until last year, that I started writing my book for, it's going to be, that's a new that I can tell you, it's going to be out in the spring of 2023. So I'm working.
How exciting.
I'm working with Rizzoli for a book. And it was about my work, but I wanted it to be also about me coming back to Mexico and my connection with flowers, and understanding how this country and my childhood and the way Mexico see flowers have impacted also my work. And I discovered by writing it, or by, trying to put together a little bit, the sense of my work, that something that people ask me very much is about my color palettes, for example. And then by digging inside of trying to say or to tell my story, I realized that it's something that obviously has to do with this country, and the way we see color, and our connection with color is really important. So I went completely sideways to what you were asking me.
Not at all. Actually, I love this. Because I'm going to interrupt for just a second. Because what you just said, I think we just got done replaying an episode with Maxine Owens, and she shared her story about coming to Mexico City for a workshop and designing. And the one thing that she mentions And that was very apparent in the design work with Ariella Shazar and it was a bunch of, there's a ton of designers in that thing,
Yeah.
um, is the color. And I think that's one of the exciting things about looking to different cultures, looking to different countries for inspiration, because what is just normal for you is not for everybody. And it's just
Yeah.
so inspiring to see you. And I know I love your use of color. I think it's amazing. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted. I know, but I just had to get that in there because I think that's okay. I love it.
No, and people comes to Mexico, and people is wanting to have color and see Mexico obviously as a colorful country, which it is. And then sometimes people ask me, do you like color a lot? Because maybe you don't use so many bright colors. But I think that's a little bit like making Mexico just, like a fuchsia color, and it's deeper than that. It's a
Sure.
very sophisticated relation with color, and a very sophisticated relation with combinations as well. So from the walls, the way they are painted, or like the artisans, the way they do textiles, or the way they do ceramic, or the
Right.
way they do, the color is everywhere, and sometimes it's more subtle and sometimes it's really bright, but definitely it's a culture of color. So that's something that now in the market you can see so many different varieties of colors, and growers trying to grow all the different type of colors that I love, which is very exciting for me when I go to the city, because I still have to source a lot of the flowers that I use for my events in the city. And I still have to, and I actually decide not to grow what grows more in volume in Mexico. And I only grow the things that it's hard for me to find in the market. So that's what I grow, more specific. And that's a recommendation I give a lot of the people that comes to my classes, is like, what should I grow? And I always
Right.
tell them the same thing, is grow something that will be difficult for you to find in your area, and that you think it will make your arrangements look more soft and romantic. It's easier to find, like very straight stems, because a lot of the growers have to go through certain standards of delivering, especially if you buy from the Netherlands, or if you buy from specific growers, they will have very, strict, like
Guidelines.
guidelines for growing. But when you grow your own garden and you have all these like curvy stems and more graceful little things, and like you can leave things to open until they are, changing color, for example. And I always say that, for example, with ranunculus, ranunculus in the market look one way. When you grow ranunculus, you understand that that flower is a complete different thing. It really opens in the garden. The petals become roughly. It's almost like they become from being like straight to curly, and then they really open the heart, and then they start fading colors. And it's this type of flower that really has a very long life in the garden. So you really see how it starts transforming, the colors and the shape and the texture of the petals, everything, until it fades. But it is absolutely amazing to see the cycle of that flower in the garden. It reveals a complete different flower that you have ever seen in the market. And that's just valuable, that's priceless. That's what you want to have when you have a garden. To witness that is just a gift.
Sure. And on top of that, it's like when you can bring that to your design as a farmer florist or someone growing, for your own designs, that's not duplicatable very easily unless other people are
No.
doing it. And it makes your work look so much more amazing because I think it just gives it like a depth. Because you can carry, I don't know, you can let that flower come into its own, wonderfulness. And I don't know, I love that. And I think that's,
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled about that. I love the fact that your course really brings these, like I said earlier, these two communities together. How how is that transformative to the people in your course? Like when you're on these Zoom calls and you have people from all over the world, and you have farmers and you have florists, and because you're bridging that. Um, I'd love to be a fly on the wall sometime and just kind of see what that's like, because I mean, do they ask each other questions, or are they
Yeah.
all there to ask you questions? I mean, I'm curious.
No, it's really exciting because we also have beginners. We also have people that has been doing it for a long time in both fields, growing and designing. We have people that do weddings, people that doesn't do weddings, people that is there just for the love of art, people that is there that have shops, for example, floral shops.
Sure.
People that do only flower market bundles, or people that do, it's all type of different profiles, uh, people that do weddings a la carte, for example. So all we have, I mean, it's incredible to see. And then we share a lot, so people is there. It's usually, we talk about obviously how to design. I design in front of them because they have the video, but also I do a live session where they can interrupt me and we can talk about like how do I do a centerpiece and what are the steps that I follow. But then that same class is interrupted by, I don't find that flower here, and I don't know, it just freaks me out to not find that. So how can I replace that flower with, or what are you thinking about? Like if I have an upcoming wedding and I was asked to do this. So it's always interrupted by the real life of a florist, those classes.
Yeah.
So it becomes really rich, and it becomes, I don't know, it's just like, it feels like a very open community where we can express our vulnerability as well as designers, as growers, as humans, So it's a very emotional session. Sometimes I have to say that I
Really?
almost want to cry, because it's like all these people sharing, like, I don't know if that's something that you see a lot in your podcast, but floristry is something interesting in the sense that people jumps into floral design sometimes after something difficult happened in their lives. I've seen that very much. It's a career that people takes maybe after being tired of their own career. I've been seeing in this community people that were lawyers, or women that were nurses, and the women that have work, doing contability, and they hated it, or people that were like, like really tired of doing, I don't know, real estate, or people that just lost someone, people that had a loss, a horrible loss, and they try to find in flowers a way to heal or a way to reinvent themselves. So all those things come into the classes, and it becomes intimate. It becomes a place where we talk about our problems as well, So it is really, I mean, that's why I'm telling you, that's the best thing that happened to me during the COVID, because I'm in love with the community that is there, and it's growing every time. And so we decided to open it into a page where people can submit their work, and then I give them feedback. But that feedback is also open to the other students. So we get to learn from each other, and they get to see the other people doing their own arrangements. And it was really funny because a lot of these sessions were during winter, and a lot of people didn't have actually flowers to play around, and they did it with whatever they could find in the flower market in the corner. And they were okay to express what they could say in front of others without being afraid of, I just did it with what I found, And it just feels so warm, and it becomes, it's just a nice place to be. And so I love that community.
You are so gifted at what you just described in building community. I don't know if you ever knew this. I might have hit it really well, but when we did our first interview, I started tearing up. I was like so emotional about just seeing the connection you have with nature, with your flowers, with people. And I feel like you are so gifted at just helping other people come together. And it's so funny. I don't think I've ever shared that before. And so if you go back and listen, you might hear me get a little choked up, but that's okay. But I'm just saying, it's just so special. It really is. I'm curious, what's one or two, one is fine, but what's like something that came out of these conversations? I know you've talked about some generalities of like what to grow and things, but anything specific that comes to mind that really, that really you've seen help people?
Yes, and it's this thing that the way I'm trying to approach floristry design or floral design now has very much to do with, like trying to guide people, because I don't like to use the word teaching, because I'm not trying to teach anyone anything, just trying to guide people that the closer, the more intimate you become with flowers, the more connected you are with flowers. And that means really taking the time to see, which I think that's the most important thing that I tell my students is like, don't rush into it, just like allow yourself to fall in love with one flower again. Allow yourself to just go out there, take a walk, fall in love with a leaf. It doesn't have to be a flower, sometimes it can be a texture. It can be, maybe a color palette that you saw in a rock or anything, it's just that connection with nature. What I think really transformed the way people returns to me with their floral designs, and I can see they have been really thought of, they have this calm, they have this kind of, patience to not rush into putting flowers together in a
Right.
vase. I can see that they really thought about when I tell them, like, for example, foliage is not a mechanical process, just to fill the base and then have the mechanics cover. But what about if foliage has an intention? What about if foliage traces the shape of your arrangement? What about if foliage becomes your sculpture, and you start building from that, So to start seeing each of the elements and to see each of the steps of your arrangement in a different way, and really with, this stepping back and allowing nature to guide you. That's what I can see that is really transforming the way my students return their work, So the first one looks like one thing, and the second one is like, what happened, and it's really magic. And then it is that, and it is the flower guiding you in the arrangement. That's what I really think transformed the way people see designs.
Wow, it's interesting you say that because I think today I was out walking around our property where I work, and I was on my phone, and there was this tree that I've walked by 100 times, right? And since I was on the phone, I was just standing there, and it took a second to really observe this bark and the lichen that's growing on the bark and the little weeds that are blooming that are at the base of the tree. And I'm like, you just take this snapshot and just really see the color and the texture and the rebirth that comes with spring. And I totally get exactly what you're saying. And being able, and I love your choice to use the word guide, because I feel like sometimes people need to be led. You know what I'm saying? They need the permission to stop and really take that in. And that's really cool. I really appreciate you saying that the way you did. Um,
Mhm.
that's great. Well, how often do your so you is your classes, are they open enrollment all the time, or do you have like certain times you open up the course?
Yeah, we have a certain times that open up, and it's because I can only have X amount of number of students at a time,
Sure.
and the Zoom sessions are recorded so people can watch them. Sorry, the Zoom sessions are recorded if people have to watch them, later because they couldn't join or whatever. But it can be pretty full, So we have a lot of people, and the first session, for example, I really take the time to get to know each one of them, what they do, where they're growing, what their experience with flowers, if they have already been doing this for a long time or they're beginners, and more than that, what are they looking forward to learn in these classes? So it takes a long time. So that's why I open them only like a few times a year, and then for a limited amount of students at the same time. And then we try to get the zones, like, because we have people from everywhere. So we try to do two Zoom sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, to cater, So it's also like a full-time job for me during those weeks,
I bet.
because we are in the morning connected, we are in the afternoon connected, and in a very beautiful way, but it's overwhelming. It's like to see all the people joining, and as I'm telling you, it has become really a space where we allow to be vulnerable, and vulnerability. It's beautiful, but it's hard. It takes a lot of energy from you.
Yes, it does. I totally understand that. Um, and again, that's amazing. So Another, I just this morning, I was telling you earlier, but just this morning I realized that you have another course that's kind of through the Magnolia Network. Tell me about that. I had no idea.
Yes, it's been great. It's been great to work with them. I just adore them. You know, they just came to my garden last year. We had them filming just like small courses, you know, small classes. And the intention is really to bring nature into people's life, into people's homes. So how to learn to arrange in a kind of, in the same way I do. So it's very similar to my classes, but more simple, you know, like for people that is not necessarily floral designers, but from any, you know, like you could be a doctor, you could be a chef, you could be a, you know, like I don't know, a beginner, you can be housewife, whatever, or like professional, whatever, but you can, they're very simple to watch. They're very short. And I teach people how to do a centerpiece. I teach people how to put a bundle together if they want to bring a gift to someone else. I teach people to arrange without flowers, just some greens, you know, some leaves in your house. I also teach people how to style a table for the magnolia. So how to put a table together to welcome people into your world, into your life in a beautiful way. And everything has to do with celebrating life, celebrating nature, celebrating, you know, that we can bring nature into your homes. And it was beautiful to do it during the pandemic because everybody was spending a lot of time in their homes. You know, we were
Right.
spending time in our houses for the first time in a long time. So it was a way that they, I think, really, you know, aware of what was happening in the world, decided to put something together. You know, it's not only my class, but it's people, you know, cooking, and it's people gardening, and it's all sort of creative people out there doing something that is beautiful in our own homes and for our own everyday life. You know, so it's people that makes bread, and I don't know, it's just beautiful. And we did it here. They came to my garden. It was dahlia season. It was exactly last summer. The garden it was like almost like a gift. You know, it was in the best week it could possibly be when they came by luck. You know, I wasn't expecting it to be like that, but suddenly they came and all the garden was exploding in beauty. So we had them here. We filmed, and it was beautiful. And it's available on the Magnolia app. And it's also available in the Magnolia network. And I think I mean, I had some people come in here to my recent garden class and they say they came here through that. So it's
Oh,
great
wow.
because the world is spreading out there, you know?
Yeah.
So
Wow. Well, that's a great platform. You know, just because a lot of times people are new to floral design, they just they have maybe they're into gardening and they're just trying to learn some techniques on how to, like you already described, bring nature indoors. And what a great way to kind of get their feet wet, so to speak. And who
yeah,
knows? So when
yeah.
does your bigger course, it's just you, when does that come available again?
So I'm planning one that it has a lot of the people that join the class. This is a basic. The one that I have out there is very basic. You know, it's the basic of floral design. So we have a centerpiece, we have a bridal bouquet, we have a large scale
Oh,
arrangements,
okay.
we have it, but it's basic. So we're going to do one. I think a lot of the people that comes to us has a little bit more the need of understanding how to cater an event, you know, very specifics, you know, of events, because events are a complete different thing than just arranging. You know, it almost like you need
Right.
another set of skills. You know,
Yeah.
suddenly you become a producer. You know, suddenly you are not a florist anymore, you're a producer. You are managing people, you are managing orders, you are managing deliveries, you are managing uh, invoices, emails. You know, like you have all sort of things that you have to do when you do and produce big events. And there are skills that you need to know, and you know, and there are deadlines, and there is like you know, things that you have to know. And that becomes really overwhelming for people that is trying to create a business out of floristry. You know, how do I start? Or how do I know how many freelancers I need, for example? Or how do I know if I'm ordering the right amount of flowers? Do you make a recipe? You don't make a recipe? Do you, I don't know, do you charge more for this or for that? Or how do you calculate? I mean, there's tons of questions about producing a big event. especially when it's a destination wedding,
Right.
because it becomes even more complicated. Now you have freelancers, you have to buy flights, you have to do an Airbnb, you have to have a studio. Do you have buckets? Do you have tables? Do you have all these things that you never think that you will have to be thinking, but you need everything to be? Do you have, like, I don't know, are you renting vans? Do you have permits to rent vans in that area? You know, like, there's so many things. So then I've been doing bigger weddings in the last years, like for big planners. And I learned a lot, and I learned a lot the hard way, you know, because you are never prepared to understand all the skills that you need to create those things, you know, all the things that you have to know. So the next class is going to be more about like all those little things that you need to know when you are trying to make the floral business an event business, which is different from creating, you know, a beautiful arrangement for yourself. So
Yeah.
also, you know, there is an emotional side of it, is because everybody that has done, or every single florist that will hear this podcast that has done big events, know that you go into this roller coaster of emotions, because it is hard. It takes a lot of, you know, it's hard on the body, it's hard on the mind, you know, and you create something that it takes you 4, 6, 8 hours to create, and 2 hours later you are just breaking down, you know. So it has happened to me that we have been 8 hours, you know, creating this beautiful, I don't know, hoopah, or this beautiful arch and this beautiful ceremony thing, and then 4 hours after we're taking this down, you know. So that's an impact that has also an emotional side of it, you know. And you go from this very adrenaline, you know, like work to this moment of, you know, come back home, and you have to gather your energy again. You have to understand what you're doing, and what does it mean in your relation with flowers, you know, all those things that, you know, no one talks about them, but it's difficult. And if you want to make a floral business, you have to learn a little bit those things, you know. It's not just putting flowers together. It's actually way more complicated than that.
Yeah, it really is. Well, and I know also from just past experience that, like you said, until you're in it, you don't always know that. And sometimes that's a little panicky to learn that on the run, but that's incredible. You mentioned destination weddings, and with the pandemic and so many things shutting down, how have you been able to navigate that? Are you back to normal as far as your business goes for the most part?
Yes, I think everybody went back to nothing, to craziness. The last 4 months of the last year, it was very difficult for every single florist I know. You know, we had incredible amount of work, but not only me. I think everybody that I called was like, what's going on? You know, we have wedding and wedding and wedding. It seems like everybody that didn't get married decided to get married in 4 months. So
Right.
it was an insane amount of work, an insane amount of events. I think September, October, November last year it was crazy. Even December was crazy. And so that was from really being into a very calm, you know, kind of, I'm doing my online classes, a little event here and there, to suddenly have back-to-back events and events and events and events. And it was really tough in the body. It was a lot of learning, a lot of, you know, like, but I think I talked to, I don't know, to florists out there that I love, and that I know that they were in the same thing. We were all in this roller
Right.
coaster of like, wow, this is difficult. So, but it was a very good year. I mean, in that sense, I think a lot of the people that I know sold more in 4 months than in the last 3 years, you know, of weddings and events.
Right.
So in that sense was good, but it was a little bit too much, I think so.
Nerve-wracking just a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so because you know, I know that your seasons can be different because number one, you know, where you're located, but number two, you have like a rainy and a dry season. So your normal wedding season is when?
Well, you know, like I cater mostly weddings for Americans that come and get married in Mexico now,
Okay.
more than Mexican weddings. One reason is because Mexicans still like to invite 800 people or 500 people, and I don't cater weddings that big.
Oh, really?
um, no, I stopped doing them. You know, I did them for 2 years. I did them for 2 years intensive. I did weddings of 500 people, 500 people, 500 people. And it became too much. It became too much. And I understood that instead of giving me something, they were really taking away the pleasure of what I do. Having to do hundreds of centerpieces in a weekend is not what I want to do, and you don't do creative work, and you start to produce instead of create, which is a big difference. And I like smaller weddings. So now I do smaller weddings for Americans that come and get married in Mexico, maybe 150 to maximum 300 people, which still big. Sorry, it's still big, but it's manageable, manageable. And well, also we have a lot of installations. So that means that we have weddings October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and May. June, July, and August always become a little bit slower. But I love it because it's the time where my garden is actually blooming with dahlias. So then I stopped doing weddings to do some of my big workshops in the garden, which are with dahlia seasons. And I am also traveling to England this year to teach there. And so that's going to be wonderful. So.
Wow, that's amazing. When are you going to England?
August. So I'm going to be there with Lucy the Flower Hunter, which.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. She's great. So we did a class last month with Max Gill in Berkeley.
Yeah.
The three of us, we usually do a workshop once a year. We didn't do it all the pandemic, so we were excited and happy to do it. And I'm doing one again with Lucy and a local grower, an English grower called Carol. We're doing it in her garden. She grows the most amazing, beautiful flowers. And our classes are always about learning to hear your own voice. What is that you want to say, or that you want, how you want to express yourself through flowers. And the other thing is about seasonality and using local things and be really inspired by the garden. So it's going to be beautiful, I think so.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Of course it's going to be beautiful. Of course. That's so crazy. I wondered if there might be a story or something you could share that maybe over the past couple of years have really been difficult, like some challenge you've had to overcome. Because you always sound like, you're yes, you have some challenges, but somehow you have this zenness about you that allows you just to kind of ride the wave. But Instagram sometimes makes us all look perfect. But I just curious if there was anything in particular that you really struggled with through this past couple of years.
Yes, and it's interesting because the people that gets to work with me closer in the garden or in weddings and events tell me like, well, it really looks like like a fairy tale, but it is hard, and it is hard. Well, I think what is the most difficult thing that I worried about, about this thing is that I'm trying to grow more because I'm working with the local community. I'm working with the local community of women and men, especially women around this area. So it's difficult to just live if you have events, because events come and go. And this is a community that needs an everyday income. This is a community that needs to eat every day. So there's no way for us to have an event. So I'm trying to create something that helps this community and helps these local women. So one of the things that I'm trying to work on is in this new project that I hope it comes live, that it's a flower farm for the local women to learn how to grow flowers, how to sow flowers, and to create weekly bundles just to deliver in the city so that they can create themselves, and that way they will have an income, an income that doesn't rely on me having weddings or not, which is something that I really stress on how, because I have a more privileged life, but some of them really don't. They can't live if I don't have weddings June, July, and August, and I try to put them in my workshop, and I try to bring them to the things that I do, and then they come here in the garden, and we work together in the garden. But it's a lot of people, so that's that's the thing that I'm struggling the most right now. It's like how to create this garden a regular income for all the people that now is living from this garden. And it's tough, you know. Sometimes I have big doubts of how do I do it. It would be easier if it was just me, but life brought me all these people into my life. Now they are my extended family, and I feel responsible. So sometimes that responsibility feels beautiful and sometimes feels overwhelming, and sometimes I don't know what to do with it. So it's that process of taking a bigger step and growing and becoming maybe a bigger business that can allow that kind of overheads. So that's where I am. I still haven't figured it out, but it's sometimes a struggle. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I don't know that we always think about that. And that was one thing I know we talked about in the first time we spoke, was how you like to, you think about your community. You think about how you can help empower other women and educate them, and to help come alongside you and teach them design or growing or whatever. And I think that's just really special that you have that awareness. And I can imagine that, in a way, knowing you just a tiny bit, that can almost feel a little overwhelming at times, when you see, like, okay, I don't have anything going on for a few weeks, and you care about the people, so it's easy to kind of have that issue.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that, and I think that I wish more people in their business realize that it doesn't matter what kind of business you have. You can have an impact on the people in your community, and empowering those around you to help. And
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel like you're very inspiring when it comes to that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I mean, it's incredible, the transformation that you see women get through. I mean, every single human, but especially the women that I've witnessed here, the transformation they get, or they have been getting into their life by working with flowers. You know, it's just the recognition that you can create something beautiful, you know, that you can co-create, because the flowers are beautiful on its own.
Sure.
But you put them together, you know, you put them together in a special way, or in a kindful way, or in a whatever, you put them together. So that recognition already changed the way you see yourself, you know, change the dignity of yourself. You know, you see yourself in a different way. And I've seen that in the women that work here. You know, they are more, I don't know, they're more sure about themselves. You know, they have more, the pose, you know, of themselves. It's just like these things that gets transformed with flowers. And I don't really know how to explain it, but there is a deep transformation that comes in the life of people that is in touch with flowers. Flowers have a very special way of vibrating, a very special way of healing, a very special way of connecting people with their own beauty. That is incredible. And I get to see that. So that's something I want to continue growing. So it just fills me, you know, it makes me really grateful to see that, you know?
Sure. Well, I love that. And again, thank you. I know I always like to, and I don't even know if this will be the last question, but I always like to ask, for that piece of advice question, you know, the dreaded advice question. And I'm just curious if there was anything in particular that's on your heart.
Yeah, I guess slow down, you know? We experienced that through the pandemic. We were all able to slow down a little bit, you know, to spend more time at home, to spend more time with the people we loved, to spend more time in our gardens, to spend more time with flowers, you know? And I just hope we don't forget that, you know? That's the thing that
Yes.
came to this world to show us, you know, that there's very little we need out there, you know? It's really inside our homes where life is, you know, and we can create a beautiful life inside our homes. You know, people were sharing food, people were eating together. So that kind of slowdown, I hope, even if we're getting all these new things and all this new rhythm of work again. So I just hope we don't forget that. It was a very special year for a lot of people, and it was a painful year for a lot of other people. People that
Indeed.
obviously lost people that they loved, and it was difficult years for them. But I'm sure we all learned a little bit of that. That slowing down and really being at home and being with the people that you love was the most important thing. So I guess that's what I hope we don't forget after 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned the garden, and I would be crazy to not ask this question. But anything new and exciting that you're excited that you're trying this year, or things you're planting? I love your attitude, like you mentioned earlier, like trying to plant things that are hard to find or challenging. But anything new that maybe we should be looking for?
Well, it's not new, and it's actually very common and very easy, but I just realized that it's incredible to grow, and I didn't grow them. They are like the most unfussy things to grow and the most incredible things, but I'm in love with sunflowers. There are so many varieties of sunflowers out there. I'm growing like 4 types of varieties of sunflowers, not necessarily the yellow with black center, but different types of. They are so easy to grow. They really take no effort, and they suddenly, make this amazing, colorful garden in between seasons that I didn't have before, because sunflower is a little bit in between season for me. So now I don't have ranunculus anymore. Dahlias are still just starting to grow. And I have now roses and sunflowers as mainly thing in the garden. And I'm fascinated by the simplicity of sunflowers and how incredibly beautiful they are. So that's one. And the other one that I'm growing and I'm excited is Burbascum. I had never grown it before, and I just love it. I love how, here at least, it just grew incredibly big. The leaves are amazing, and the flowers are just these hairy things, and it's full of bumblebees. And sometimes I grow things that are for arranging, and sometimes I like to grow things just for myself and for the garden. And I love that in the garden now. I love the Burbascum and how it's all the bumblebees are just around it, and like it just makes me really happy. Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
So the Burbascum, like I think of, here in the States where we have that type that almost like a weed. It has this huge crown to it, and it has the big yellow spike that comes up.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Is that the one you're growing?
Yeah.
Really?
That's the one I'm growing. Yeah.
That's amazing. I do agree. And I think it's even cool when it's like done flowering and dried and you have this incredible stalk. That's kind of cool. I was just curious because there's also some smaller varieties of Burbascum that I used to have a local grower who brought it to me and never could figure out the cut stage because it always dropped its flowers so much. And so, but if you're growing it just to enjoy, then why not? Absolutely. I love that. That's great.
Yes, I think we should grow a lot more things just to enjoy. Not all the flowers are meant to be done for cut. They are not meant to. They don't have a long life in a vase. In water, but they're just inspiring the same. They're inspiring to see, and sometimes just having flowers out in the garden, they teach you valuable lessons. Like color combinations, textures, what they like, movement. So it's a flower that I'm enjoying right now.
I love that. Well, I wanted to ask too, with sunflowers, are you growing any of the branching varieties or are they all single stem?
I'm growing a branching variety. It's the small yellow one that actually I saw it for the first time in the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And the thing that I actually loved the most was the very hairy leaves. It has very hairy, almost sagey leaves. And it just grows wild and crazy, and it has all kind of branching. And I'm growing also the single ones, that is just one cut, one flower, which sometimes it is what it is, but it's beautiful, and they just grow here so easily, and it's one of the only flowers that I am allowed to grow without thinking of a greenhouse. They like outside. They don't care. You don't have to water them a lot. They're like drought resilient. They're just incredible. I adore them. So it's good.
Yeah, it's nice to grow something easy on occasion,
Yes.
especially if it fills in the gap between, like you said, the ranunculus and the dahlias
Yeah.
and all of that. That's just awesome.
Yeah, and
Well,
some people, tells you that some of a very in between good season is like, for example, digitalis, But for me, they don't do that well. For me, an in between flowers are actually sunflowers, and some of the late summer flowers for the rest of, for Americans. So, for example, zinnias, they have to bloom right now for me. So they're about to bloom in like maybe 3 weeks more, because once the rain season starts, they just don't like it. It's too humid. They get mildew too soon. There is not enough sunlight. So this is my in between season would be the sunflowers, the roses, and the beginning of the zinnias and cosmos. And that's because I really need to plant them early so that they don't really catch the long rainy days because it's too humid for them.
so how much rain do you get in when it's the rainy season?
All the rain you can imagine, Scott.
Really?
All the rain, yeah. It can be hours and hours, and it's not like English rain, it's like tropical rain. So it can really, it feels like the sky is falling down, and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So by the end of the season, a lot of the flowers are tired. A lot of the plants are tired, everything is tired because there's not enough sunlight. It gets overcast by 3 p.m. It's already gray and it rains, and sometimes it rains too much. But then it's absolutely necessary because then this is a woodland. We need that water for the wood to stay, 5 months of drought completely alive. So we are grateful. We are blessed to have that amount of rain. Sometimes we complain, but we shouldn't. There are so many places out in the world that doesn't have water, and we are blessed with water for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I don't think of water. I think I said this before, but I don't think of water in Mexico. I don't think of it that way. But of course, the tropical side of it makes perfect sense.
Totally.
Yeah, and I know like with Ecuador and some of the product that it's brought into the States, and I know they have a wet season and a dry season, and depending on how that pans out and times with holidays, depends on how many flowers you get. Do you have to do a lot of like preparing of your garden for all that water? Like, because
Yeah,
everything's in
we are
raised
doing that now.
beds, or like what do you do for that? Because that's a crazy amount of rain.
Well, we amend the soil, so we really have to add some kind of grit, anything that will allow
Uh,
the water to just drain easily and faster. So everything that is on raised beds and has a greenhouse doesn't really matter because anyway, those beds are filled with compost. But everything on the side of the garden that doesn't have greenhouse or protection, the soil, it's very clayish, and after the rain season can become really, really, really hard. So we amend all of the sides of the garden with a lot of grit and a lot of rock and a lot of, so we really need the ground to, strain as fast as possible, because a lot of the things that we have there otherwise would rotten, like we have, I don't know, daffodils that will come after. So if we don't have that kind of grit, they will just rot. Or we have here anything can rot. It's like
that's
the
crazy.
water is just crazy amount of water. So that's what we do. We prepare the soil. We prepare it to be just like drains faster and gets less tight.
Compacted. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, all right. Well, like always, this has been amazing. Thank you
Thank you, Scott.
so much. It's been just great to see you again and connect with you. And thank you for being on the Flower Podcast.
Thank you, Scott. I love talking to you. I missed you. So I hope we get another chance to talk again soon.